Hello and welcome to my channel. Today's video is the first of my video series on the ancient Greek civilization, which was one of the oldest civilizations in Europe and which is the foundation of Western culture. This video series, which has 3 episodes, covers a wide range of topics, including philosophy, art, religion, and the political system. Today, I'm going to focus on the ancient Greek philosophy. In the second episode, I will be talking about its political system, which, as you may know, was the very first system of democracy. My final video will be about its art, religion, and social life. By the way, this video series is based on my published book, Essentials of World History, the 3rd edition. If you are new to this channel, my name is Frank Zhu, and I'm a college professor teaching sociology, history, and philosophy. I'm also an award-winning landscape photographer. Greece is consisted of many small islands. It is also a mountainous country, with 80% of its area made up of mountains. The highest mountain is Mount Olympus, which was the home of the famous 12 Olympian gods of the ancient Greek mythology. The English word Greek stemmed from the Latin word Graeci, which was used by the Romans to refer to the Greeks. Thanks to the extensive influence of the Roman Empire, the word Greek has become the common word to refer to Greek people and its culture in most languages. However, Greeks don't call themselves Greek. Instead, Greeks refer to themselves as Hellenes, which were named after Hellen, who was a figure in the ancient Greek mythology. Of course, the modern-day Greece has its roots in the civilization of ancient Greece. Historians traditionally view the ancient Greek period as beginning with the date of the first Olympic Games in 776 BCE. During the hundreds of years that followed, the Greeks built many city-states across the region, which was a major feature of the Greek civilization. Those city-states were culturally linked, but politically independent. I will talk about this in more detail in my upcoming videos. Around 500 BCE, the Persian Empire, which had been established in modern-day Iran, launched a series of attacks on the Greek city-states. Led by the city-states of Athens and Sparta, many city-states united and repelled the Persians. The victory was followed by a period of brilliant cultural and political achievements, particularly in Athens. Great works in politics, philosophy, history, literature, and science were produced, making Greece the cradle of Western civilization. However, the cultural boom came to an end with the occupation by the Macedonians, led by Alexander the Great in 336 BCE. I will probably make a separate video talking about Alexander the Great in the future. Please let me know if you are interested. As we shall see in my next video, much of the success story in ancient times was owed to the geographic features. The natural environment, mountains, rivers, and seas helped to stimulate the ancient Greeks to create their unique social, political, and cultural institutions. Greek culture was a powerful influence in the Roman Empire, which spread it to many parts of Europe. The ancient Greek civilization has been immensely influential on the language, politics, educational systems, philosophy, art, and architecture of the modern world, particularly during the Renaissance in Western Europe. Those of you who have been following my channel will know that I have talked about Greek philosophy in many of my philosophy videos on this channel. Time and again, I mentioned that the word philosophy was originally a Greek word meaning the love of wisdom. This love partly stemmed from the unique features of the city-state. The relatively small size of the city-state made it possible for people to participate directly in discussions at political gatherings where people asked and answered questions, such as those questions about the way the city was run, about the legends of their gods, about the way nature works, or about the meaning of life. These debates, often heated and exciting, demanded that speakers think logically. As a result, people, especially young people, had to learn to reason logically and speak persuasively. Under these circumstances, three great lovers of wisdom were born. To put it another way, Greece produced three great philosophers at this time. Socrates was the pivotal figure in the development of Greek philosophy. Considered as the founding father of Western philosophy, Socrates left no written works of his own because he believed that oral argument was superior to writing. We now know about him only through his pupils, especially Plato. According to them, he was a man of great insight, integrity, self-control, and argumentative skills. He was also a typical absent-minded teacher, unattractive in appearance. Oftentimes, his behavior seemed eccentric. For example, he almost never wore shoes and almost never washed. He would spend most of the daytime standing on the street corner talking to the passers-by who would stop. He would then start teaching those who gathered around him, most of whom were young people. Socrates taught a number of pupils, but not for pay, because he believed that the goal of education was to improve the individual, not for money. His teaching approach, known as the Socratic method, was quite unique. He employed a question and answer technique. Socrates believed that the goal of education was to lead pupils to see things for themselves by using their own reason. He would begin by asking for a definition of a broad concept, such as the meaning of life, and then try to get the person to contradict himself. Then he would explain how the contradiction arose. He used this approach to teach his students to reach their own conclusions and to live their own truths fully. He believed that knowledge was virtue. The reason why some people made mistakes was the lack of knowledge. For him, only through self-examination could a person become truly knowledgeable. The real task of philosophy was to help people with self-examination so that they could live a meaningful life, because, as he said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Not only did Socrates examine life critically, he also questioned authority of all kinds, which eventually led him into trouble. Athens had a tradition of free thought and inquiry. However, since its defeat in the Peloponnesian War, which was fought between Athens and Sparta, Athenians had become more and more intolerant for open debates. Socrates' advocacy for public discussions easily got himself in conflict with authorities. Besides, many of his contemporaries disliked his attitude towards the established religion. Consequently, he was accused of impiety and corrupting young people. He was found guilty and sentenced to death by an Athenian jury. Although he could have taken many opportunities to escape or apologize and have his sentence repealed, he stayed in Athens. As a person who would never abandon his principles and who always abided by law, he accepted the cruel and unfair verdict with dignity and drank hemlock, which was Athens' method of execution at that time. Plato was a leading pupil of Socrates, and far more famous than his teacher. Plato had been a poet as a young man. It was Socrates' street lectures that turned him into a philosopher. Unlike Socrates, who wrote nothing, Plato wrote a great deal. In his books, he presented his thoughts in a series of dialogues in which Socrates was the principal speaker. Among Plato's works, the best known is perhaps The Republic. Also written in the form of dialogue, the book analyzed the difference between genuine knowledge and opinion or belief. But the dominant theme of this book was the state. Plato had a strong belief in the wisdom of the philosopher, insisting that the ideal state should be administered by a philosopher king who would know and do what was best for all citizens in the state. Below these philosopher kings, who had wisdom of course, would be those who had courage, namely warriors. All the rest were those who had strength to work. To put it another way, all people in a society were divided by Plato into three classes: those who thought, those who fought, and those who worked. And those who thought, according to Plato, were the best people that should rule the rest. Not only was Plato a great philosopher, he was also an educator. He set up a school in Athens in 387 BCE. The academy, as it was known, provided a comprehensive curriculum, which is why it is often described as the first European university. Philosophy, of course, was the major subject. Other subjects included astronomy, biology, mathematics, and political theory. What is remarkable about Plato and the academy was that it accepted female students. As Plato was a strong advocate of gender equality and believed that men and women should have the same access to education. The academy lasted for centuries as Athens' leading school of philosophy. Plato's influence on Western civilization can never be overestimated. He is regarded by many as the greatest philosopher of all times in the West. For example, the famous English philosopher of the 20th century, Alfred North Whitehead, described the entire tradition of European philosophy as only footnotes to Plato. Aristotle was one of Plato's pupils, who studied at the academy. Unlike his teacher, who is often seen as an idealist, Aristotle is seen as a hands-on realist because he believed in gathering knowledge from studying the real world. His wide interests led him to write on an astonishing array of subjects: logic, physics, astronomy, metaphysics, religion, rhetoric, literary criticism, and natural science. However, his major contributions to Western thought were his writings on philosophy and politics. The most famous book was perhaps Politics, a book that is still very influential in political studies nowadays. Its essential question is, how can men best live together? Aristotle declared that man is by nature a political animal. According to him, human beings are more like bees who live in relation to one another under the control of a government. For him, there were 3 good forms of government: monarchy, aristocracy, and constitutional government. But he warned that monarchy could easily turn into tyranny, and aristocracy would easily become oligarchy. Therefore, he believed that constitutional government was the best form of government. Not only was he famous as a philosopher, he was also known as a deep thinker in astronomy. His theory about the Earth being at the center of the universe, which was known as the geocentric model, remained dominant until the scientific revolution in the 16th and 17th centuries. He claimed that everything was made up of 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water, all of which were arranged in a hierarchical order. This theory influenced many areas of study, including chemistry and medicine, for hundreds of years, until it was proved wrong during the scientific revolution. Another reason for Aristotle's fame was his role as the tutor for the young Alexander the Great of Macedon. How much influence he had on the future empire creator remains open to argument, but many historians believe that the open-mindedness of Alexander the Great and his tolerant policy towards different peoples stemmed from Aristotle's teachings. That's all that I wanted to talk about in this video, which is the first episode of my video series on the ancient Greek civilization. In the next episode, I'll be talking about the political system. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.